Live from the slightly twisted deck bar, it's the Poojie Podcast with Justin Lemie.
The Poojie Podcast is proudly sponsored by Cimarron Golf Club, located in Jacksonville, Florida, off County Road 210, just west of St. John's Parkway.
Yes, indeed. Thank you to Cimarron Golf Club for sponsoring the Poojie Podcast. Definitely appreciate all they do over there. And today is June 8th, Monday, June 8th, and we are here at lunchtime, and sports is coming back, and we have a lot to talk about, and it's exciting times for anyone that's a fan of sports. I do have an interview coming up for you, but first I do want to take some time to just kind of talk a little bit about what's going on in the world of sports. So let's talk about it. You know, we got the NBA last week just approved a plan to come back, 22 teams, so 8 teams are out of it. 22 teams coming back. They will be stationed down in Orlando at the Wide World of Sports. So I am going to be reading off my phone a little bit just to kind of keep the information 100% factual, just so you guys know. But 22 of 30 teams, 9 from the East, 13 from the West, with the Washington Wizards being the only team in the East that is not currently sitting in 1 through 8 in the playoff seeding. So 8 regular season games for each of those teams based on their current schedule. And if the 9th seed in either conference is within 4 games of the 8th seed, there will be a double elimination series played. The 9th seed would have to beat the 8th seed twice to make it into the playoff. If the 8th seed wins once, they will make it in as the 8th seed to the playoffs. So kind of a cool thing there. And then the latest that this season could go with the playoffs would be October 12th. So the finals would end on October 12th at the latest, with the NBA draft starting on October 15th and the new season beginning on December 1st. So kind of a quick, short off season for the NBA, pushing back the start date to December, which I think a lot of people might enjoy. They've thought about doing that previously, so could be something nice for the NBA to do moving forward, just to kind of push back their season into the summer months, back into July. So also the NHL came out and mentioned that they would kind of have a plan to come back into a season. So we're currently sitting in phase 2 of the NHL return, with phase 3 opening up, let's see here, on July 10th. So July 10th is when they will allow training camps to happen. 24 teams in 2 different hub cities. So 7 teams are not going to be coming back into the NHL season. So 24 teams will make it. Top 4 in each conference will be the 1 through 4 seeds for the playoffs. And then the other 16 teams will play in a tournament, 5 best-of-5 game series to determine the rest of the seeds. So 1 through 8, or 5 through 8 there. And then it's not going to be bracketed. It's going to be reseeded after every round. So something interesting to note there. Reseed after each round. And the current cities that are kind of up for, I guess, approval for the 2 hub cities include you got Chicago, Dallas, Vegas, Los Angeles, Pittsburgh, Vancouver, Edmonton. I know Columbus was on there. There was another Canadian city, I think Winnipeg maybe, so among others. So 16-team qualifying round and seeding round robin among 4 top teams to determine those seeds. And then after that 5-game, best-of-5 game series first round, it will go into best of 7. So something cool there as well. So exciting for that. Top 4 seeds right now that will be playing in the seeds will be Bruins, Lightning, Capitals, Flyers in the East, and the Blues, Avalanche, Golden Knights, and Stars in the West. So those 4 teams will play a round robin amongst themselves to determine seeds 1 through 4. Also this past Saturday, UFC 250, which obviously UFC's been back for the past month or so, starting here in Jacksonville with no fans, of course. But this past Saturday, Amanda Nunes won by decision. Obviously, any UFC fan, anyone that knows the UFC or the world of MMA, you know, she's arguably one of the best, if not the best, female fighter that the sport has ever seen. So she retained the featherweight title, and she also holds the bantamweight title as well. On the card as well, Sean O'Malley defeats Eddie Wineland, first-round knockout. Sterling defeats Sandhagen with a first-round submission, and Cody Garbrandt wins in a second-round TKO. So some of the favorites winning there wasn't too surprising. Nunes did win by decision. A lot of people expected her to win by TKO before that decision. But in other news, Conor McGregor has said he's retiring, but some people think it could be a smokescreen for a potential return, kind of stir the pot a little bit there. So interesting stuff. in those three worlds. But now I do want to switch it over to the interview. We do have a great interview lined up today, so please enjoy that and then finish the podcast afterward. But again, thanks for being in tune for that sports update. Hope I kind of brought you guys something you maybe didn't know already. So thanks. I do want to welcome my next guest onto the show, a First Coast News sports anchor, Creekside High School graduate and Florida Gator alum, here to talk to us a little bit about the PGA Tour, some of his thoughts about the Florida Gators, and maybe some of his opinions about the UCF Knights program down there in East Orlando. So without further ado, Ben Murphy, thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely hope we get to that last part. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we'll get into it. It's always fun kind of prying at that and hearing people's thoughts. I've talked to a few other Gator alums, social media people from Florida, journalists. So always great hearing the thoughts. But I do really quickly want to start with your, I guess, career path. Obviously, you're a younger guy working within the TV industry, which is great. And how did you get your start in TV, becoming a sports anchor here in Jacksonville at First Coast News, the station you grew up watching?
Yeah, I'll try to keep this tight because it's pretty long. In high school, we had a little TV production program that I switched out of a stats class to do. I was like, I took a week of this stats class. I was like, I'm not going to be able to finish this course. So I took a TV production class, switched into it. We rotated anchoring like a little student newscast. I was like, yeah, this is fun. And went to college and was like, let's see if we can maybe try this because I was having fun doing it. Tried it, liked it. I was like, yeah, kept having fun doing it. They then had a couple internship offers based on some of the stuff I did in college. And then for internship offers turned into a job, which kept turning into another job. And I was like, look, I'm having fun doing it and they're going to keep giving me jobs. So we're just going to keep rolling with it. Worked part-time at the student station at University of Florida. From there was hired part-time at First Coast News while I was still in college. Then actually moved to Charleston, South Carolina directly out of school for a year, worked at the NBC television station there. And then again, long story short, job opened up in Jacksonville and they hired me.
Awesome. Definitely a quick story there, but a great journey and kind of staying persistent on that path to get to where you are now. What have been some of the favorite stories that you've worked on at the news station, whether it was at college, maybe some of the great experiences that you've had within sports in just a short amount of time?
Yeah, it is definitely I got into the business to do play-by-play. That's what I wanted to do, was play-by-play. And then I kind of realized that is a very difficult path if, one, you don't have a little bit of an in, and two, you don't have the voice of an angel. And I kind of was starting to realize that I maybe didn't have either of those. But I found a niche in TV and storytelling, and I think that's what you kind of asked was what are my maybe favorite experiences. And I think it's just some of the stories you're able to tell about. We did a story a couple weeks ago on Dylan Simmons, who played baseball at Trinity Christian and then plays baseball at FSU now. He beat cancer about 4 or 5 months before he was on campus at Florida State. Didn't even know if he was going to still have a spot on the baseball team. Plays his freshman year and is batting .300 at Florida State. Just kind of those stories that you're able to tell that maybe not everyone in that area were to know about or to really have the information to. You get kind of that inside look at these great stories and what people have overcome and what people are able to go through and how sports can tie into that. And that's why I like this job. I don't know if I always said I don't know if I could do this job without sports, but sometimes that's so true because it does really – I've always said sports and life kind of relate. And while I am a diehard sports fan and I like that stuff, it is cool to see like the parallels between life and sports a lot of the times in my job. And now that I work in sports, you see it so much more. And that's probably been the best part about my job, especially doing it in my hometown, which has been a lot of fun.
And yeah, it's interesting. Jacksonville is such a large city with so many schools here in town that not a lot of people necessarily know about those unique stories or those stories of persistence and resilience and things like that. So it's kind of great to be able to use your platform to highlight those types of stories. So I can see why that would be a cool moment for you. But like you mentioned, you did go to the University of Florida. Did you grow up here in Jacksonville as a Florida Gator fan, or were you a fan of another program? How did that go?
Yeah, so both my parents went to Florida. Had a grandparent that went to Florida as well. My parents had season tickets, grew up going to all the games. I think the game on behind you went to that. It's kind of always just been in my blood. actually grew up a pretty big golfer and thought about going to Florida State. They had a golf management program. And if I wasn't able to find the right fit at Florida, I think that's what I was actually going to do. I was going to go to Florida State. But found that I liked the TV thing in high school and was like, Florida's had a solid program at the time to give me at least an outlet to do it, because a lot of these schools like will praise themselves as being Syracuse producing Mike Tirico and all these alums. And while that's great, the only thing that, in my opinion, that the school can really provide you is an outlet to do something, and your talent takes over from there. What you put in, the effort you put in, no matter where you go to school, you can find a path to do something as long as you create the opportunity for yourself. So that's what I always have believed in anything I've done in sports and life, whatever. But what you put in is what you get out, and Florida gave me a good outlet to do that. And had a lot of fun there and really enjoyed my time at the student station. They gave me an opportunity to work hard and come out with a resume and opportunity to get a job. And from Creekside to Florida, back to Jacksonville.
There you go. That's awesome. It's funny you mentioned that about Florida State. I was actually between UCF and Florida State for sports management.
Both great schools, man.
I wanted sports management, and I knew Florida State had a great sports management program, but my whole family dating back to the 50s went to FTU, and then it became UCF. And my brother at the time was at UCF, so kind of a similar lineage as you had at Florida. I had that within Central Florida. So ultimately decided UCF. But then you also did mention you kind of get from it what you put into it. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I did want to ask you, how do you, I guess, improve yourself and become a better anchor on these days off that you have? How do you kind of improve it and get better at your job?
So when I was in college, I really wanted to try and figure out, okay, how do I look? I'm in an industry where there are less jobs than people who want the jobs. So it's ultra competitive, and you got to find a way to separate yourself. And as a white dude with a comb over, just an average looking guy, how am I going to do that? There are thousands of me. So what I would do is I'd go online and I'd find people that I think have gotten to a point in their careers, back when I was in college, who I would consider are successful. Okay, I would go and look at people down the line and be like, okay, what made them successful? How did they get to where they're at? Was it the tone of the voice? Was it the way they talked? Was it this? Was it that? And I could kind of see the difference between kids I would go to school with and people at the college and the original and the kind of first entry level of the job field that I'm in, and the difference between the people who had made it. And I tried to work to see, how do I get to that point, whether it be the way I write, whether it be the tone of my voice, whether it be how I talk, whether it be how I present, all of these things. And it kind of it led me to a pretty good internship where I thought, where I would go for a summer, I could come out being good at this job. And that's actually what ended up happening. I learned a lot in a 4 or 5 month span from this group of 4 or 5 people. And I won't go too much into that, but I always viewed it as, how do I get to where they are, and how can I kind of separate myself? And I think it's the same in any field. How do I make myself better by looking at what people have done, whether it's following a path or using that path to create your own? I think you can learn a lot from what people who are successful have done, because they're successful for a reason. And then whether that's just reaching out to someone, shooting them an email, how did you get here? How did you do this? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? Critiquing yourself, having them critique you. It was the best way I found to improve myself, by looking down the road at the kind of towards an end goal and figuring out how to get there.
Yeah, I think having that self-awareness is definitely something that benefits a lot of people as they're entering into an industry, especially as competitive as the one you're in. And then on top of that, like you mentioned, reaching out to people that are successful. I think more often than not, people are a lot more willing to help others than a lot of people want to believe. So I think obviously reaching out and getting that help benefited you to get to where you are today. But I am glad you brought up about watching other sports anchors to kind of improve yourself. Takes me kind of into golf. One of my favorite golfers, Jason Duffner, he used to tell a cool story about how he would watch Ben Hogan's swing and kind of emulate Ben Hogan's swing to kind of improve his own. So real quick, I see you're wearing the Titleist hat. I know you mentioned you enjoy golf and everything. What's your thoughts right now on the PGA Tour season? Obviously, TPC Sawgrass was the first tournament to kind of get canceled right in the middle of it. But with PGA Tour kind of coming back June 8th, is that the next step in the sports world returning to normalcy?
It's going to be very interesting. That was a tough week for us in Jacksonville. That was kind of, at least for me, watching and growing up around that tournament. That's my Super Bowl of the year, getting to be around the players in the tournament all week. I love that week. It's a phenomenal week. That was tough. That weekend, it was kind of all, and it took 2 to 3 weeks for it to kind of lay in that, wow, the players got canceled. We don't have sports. The Masters is gone. It really kind of didn't set in. This was actually the first time I was going to spend on the media side a full week at Augusta. So it all kind of just dissipated very quickly. But now on the other end of that, for how quickly it dissipated is how congested this fall season is going to be. And honestly, Sunday was the most fun I've had watching golf in about a year. The little 2v2 match. I mean, we had been on so much of a drought that the anticipation to finally watch live sports, and get to watch them play at Seminole and everything that went into that was a lot of fun. But as far as things going to go come June when they play in Texas, it's going to be interesting to see how it is with no fans. I mean, golf is one of those sports where you don't really realize it. I could send you a video. I sent this to my buddies the other day. They're like, oh, we won't really notice a difference with no fans. And I sent them a video. I think it was like the 08 U.S. Open at Torrey Pines when Tiger made the 15-footer to send it to a playoff with Rocco Mediate. And the roar, it's like you notice it on TV. And I said, watch this and tell me what it's going to be like with no fans. You telling me they're going to go fist pumping like it's like that when there's nobody around. It's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out with no fans. It was one thing for a little 2-on-2 match on Sunday to get a little taste of what that's going to be like. But even then, when we get to a major, when we get to a big tournament, maybe even the FedEx Cup run, it'll be very interesting to see what it's like with no fans, because golf, again, you notice it, and I think these bigger sports, but it plays a part in what you watch on TV, and it's going to be a different experience, I think, than what we're used to getting.
And yeah, NASCAR returned this past Sunday, and I was watching it myself out here, and I was thinking to myself, this is a great sport to kind of have returned because the fans don't necessarily come into play from a competitive standpoint. Mm-hmm. But whereas in, golf and especially football, baseball, those types of sports, the fan noise and the crowd noise can really kind of affect the outcome of a lot of events that we see. So it will be interesting to see. I'm excited to get back to it. And you mentioned the Masters there. I think they have plans right now to play the Masters in November, which will be very interesting to see from a golf fan standpoint, and seeing Augusta National in a totally different light. So will be exciting to get that played at the very least. But let's jump into Florida Gator athletics, the program. What's in store for them if football does return this year? What's the outlook for the Florida Gators?
Based on what we've taken these last 2 years and seen out of Florida's entire season comes down to beating Georgia. It comes down to the game in Jacksonville. That's the hump Mullen hasn't been able to get over. And last year, Georgia schemed him up perfectly. The year before, I actually think Mullen outcoached Kirby, but Georgia just has so much depth and so much talent. It is so hard to overcome what Kirby has done on the recruiting trail. But if there's going to be a year for Mullen to do it, at least in this up income where you're trying to get over that hump and show kids at 17, 18 years of age that are making decisions for their lives that you should come to Florida and not Georgia based on what we've seen over the last few years, this is the year to do it. They've got a transfer quarterback, and they haven't had time to practice with the transfer quarterback. Mullen has a returning quarterback. He has a pretty stout defense coming in this year, and there's talent around offensively. The weakness on this Florida team last year was the offensive line and the ability to create a run game. Well, it's pretty much the same offensive line coming back. So you got to think they're not going to get any worse. So the season is laid out for them to be successful. There's no big opening games like there was even against Miami last year. There's nothing to that extent. They play Ole Miss on the road. They get LSU at home. Again, we'll have to see how the home field advantage plays out with what we do with fans come fall. But Tennessee on the road And it really just comes down to that game in Jacksonville against Georgia. It'll be very interesting to see if he's able to get over that hump, because that right now that is the roadblock for Mullen. 2 great seasons to start out his time returning to Gainesville, but the thing that you got to do at Florida is beat Georgia, because you can't get to Atlanta without beating Georgia. And that's pretty much what it's going to come down to.
Yeah, it seemed like the past few years, and I apologize, there's a garbage truck just on the other side of this house over here, so if you hear that, that's my bad. But it seems like for the past decade or so, Florida and Georgia have been jockeying for the top of the SEC East, I guess, right? And then they've always come face-to-face with Alabama, or now most recently LSU in the SEC championship game. So like you said, the roadmap is there, and to kind of get to that next level. But to get to that next level, I don't think a lot of people realize just how important it is to beat the rivals. One, because there's a reason they're your rivals within that division, within the conference, to get to that next level. So I looked at the schedule. I definitely don't think that there's really anything in the way, if they do get past Georgia, of them going undefeated this season. I think that would definitely be a realistic opportunity. LSU loses Joe Burrow, loses some pieces there, so we'll see if they can handle that. But then, like you mentioned, I think is it Jamie Newman transferring from Wake Forest into Georgia?
Yeah.
That's who it is. So,
Newman's transferring in, and like I said before, the schools that are really going to struggle this year in the fall, I think, are the ones who have a new quarterback incoming and a new coach incoming. I think Florida State got a tough break rolling in after a tough 2 or 3 year stretch with Willie Taggart, thinking they get their guy in and not being able to get that system in this year. And as far as Newman goes, they're adjusting the system around him. He's more mobile for Georgia. They kind of run that pro-style offense, but they said that they're going to make a change to try to get him more in a spread-type situation. Well, when are you going to have time to install that? It's with really no spring ball and only virtual meetings. It'll be interesting to see how teams that had to make a big overhaul this year really are affected come fall.
Yeah, and it's obvious, the SEC is the top conference in the nation with the most talent, not only being here in the Southeast, but then also having the coaches to kind of back it up. You look at the coaches within, now you get Lane Kiffin, you get Mike Leach coming into the West. So I've been telling some friends, I just kind of want the SEC network to create an SEC West coaches show and just have those personalities sit down and talk and hang out, because I think that would be an amazing piece of content to put out there to the college football world, just a lot of personalities. But I know you just mentioned the SEC and playing against Georgia. Now within the state, you obviously have Florida State, Miami, and Florida as for the past 20, 30 years, even 40 years, being the big three. And as you can see behind me, the UCF flag, but with me trying to take as much bias out of it as possible, where does UCF fit into the state as far as the football culture goes, as far as their talent goes? And is there an opportunity for them to maybe start competing consistently with those other 3 schools in the state year in and year out? So there you have it. Thank you to Ben Murphy for jumping on the Poojie Podcast for part 1 of that interview. Part 2 will be coming up here in a few days on Thursday. If you're streaming this podcast platform, it'll be Friday morning, but it will be on Thursday, part 2 for Ben Murphy. So thank you for doing that, Ben. More talk coming up on Thursday. But just to close this out, some exciting developments for this past weekend and then moving forward. Poojie Parlay, for those that don't know, Poojie Parlay on Twitter. Poojie Parlay made his comeback after this 3-month hiatus. Last bets were placed on March 11th, so Poojie Parlay came back strong with the Harvick victory in NASCAR. Already had a few people reach out to me saying that they had Harvick winning based on the tweet, and they cashed in nicely there. So we enjoyed seeing that for sure. So Poojie Parlay on Twitter. Definitely be sure to follow Poojie Parlay on Wednesday as we have PGA Tour golf returning starting on Thursday, which we'll get to in a second. But with NASCAR, the Folds of Honor Quick Trip 500 in Atlanta was this past weekend on Sunday, and not too big of a surprise here. Kevin Harvick taking home the victory, led 151 laps, so just about half the race he led. Third victory at Atlanta, and Atlanta was actually the first track he ever got a victory at in his Cup Series career, and he was filling in, or he took over the Goodwrench car, number 29 car, back in 2001 after the passing of Dale Earnhardt, who we know drove the number 3. So it was kind of a sentimental victory for Kevin Harvick there in Atlanta. So he's had great success there in the past, and it was great to see him driving that Busch Light car with a other Busch Light car, Clint Boyer, as well on the track. So it was cool seeing that too. Won by a nice margin, 3.5 seconds for his 51st career win. Second win this season, ninth top 10 finish in 10 races this season, and leader in the points race for the Monster Energy Cup Series. First win was in Atlanta in 2001, like I mentioned, and seventh racer in NASCAR history to have over 20 wins or more after the age of 40, which is kind of a cool accomplishment for him. Kyle Busch finished in second, with Truex passing him with 5 to go, or with passing Truex with 5 to go. Truex came in third after leading 62 laps. He won the opening 2 stages of the race. So for those that don't know, NASCAR does their races in stages, with winning the stage getting you additional points for the standings. Ryan Blaney fourth, Denny Hamlin in fifth. Kurt Busch finished in sixth. What's interesting about Kurt Busch, was projected to finish top 5 in the Poojie Parlay, got pushed to projected finish of top 10 after he failed inspection and had to start in 40th. So started at the back of the pack and actually worked his way all the way back up to 6th for the finish. Jimmy Johnson, on the day that a grandstand at Atlanta Motor Speedway got named after him, Johnson Corner, he finished 7th, which was cool. He's had great success at Atlanta as well. Chase Elliott, the pole sitter who started in first for the race, finished in 8th. So another top 10 for him. He's been on fire this season for the return from COVID. And then back-to-back Sunday winner, past 2 Sundays, Brad Keselowski, winner of those 2 Sunday races, finished in 9th. So another top 10 for him. And Logano, Joey Logano, Team Penske teammate, finished in 10th. So Clint Boyer was leading, led 58 laps, had a pit late. He ended up falling to 20th. So a little bit of a disappointing finish for him. And to round out the weekend, Sunday night, those on Twitter familiar with Barstool Sports, Coach Doug's was in action for the national championship against Virginia Tech. The undefeated number 1 Tennessee Volunteers up against number 2 Virginia Tech out in Pasadena, California. And Coach Doug's, let me tell you, he laid an egg. Was not good. Big Cat did not coach that team up as well as they should have been coached up. And awful defensive performance. Very predictable on offense, and that's just not going to cut it against the number 2 team in the country. And they lost 49-29. So a very terrible ending to a storybook season for Coach Doug's. Coaching carousel tonight, Monday, 8:30, Monday, June 8th. If you are listening, streaming this on Tuesday, June 9th, 6/9. The coaching carousel has already been completed, and Coach Doug's may be at Tennessee still, or he could be elsewhere. So we'll find out tonight, but week 1 is tonight after the coaching carousel. And then looking ahead this week, we do have the PGA Tour returning in Fort Worth, the Colonial, the Charles Schwab Challenge. Going to be interesting to see how these players respond. Obviously not having any fans in attendance, going to be something interesting to note there. And then also a 3-month layoff. I mean, obviously the players have been practicing, playing on their own at their home courses, expecting that fully, but definitely going to be interesting to see how they respond. So excited to get back to some golf Thursday through Sunday there at Colonial. 16 of the top 20 players will be in the field, so kind of exciting in that regard that we're going to have a lot of elite players playing in that tournament that maybe they wouldn't otherwise have played if it wasn't for this whole situation. So slowly but surely kind of creeping back to normalcy. Still waiting on other sports to kind of come around and figure out what they're doing, but golf coming back, NASCAR's obviously been back, and UFC's been back as well. So exciting to see this all happening, but I think like NASCAR, I think golf is going to capture a lot of eyes from fans that have just been missing sports. So it's a good opportunity, I think, for the PGA Tour to kind of grow that fan base a little bit, put on a good performance, and have a lot of stellar golfers out on the course this week. So again, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Poojie Podcast. I hope you enjoyed the interview. Hope you enjoyed the sports updates. Again, excited to be back to normal or getting there with the NBA and NHL kind of announcing their plans to come back. Obviously, all things considered, it's been a long time since we've had those sports relevant in the world of sports and everything. So looking forward to it, but thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you Thursday.
Be sure to follow our show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and other podcast streaming services, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel to check out unique video elements for each interview.